dahati purvam yo vai vedangscha prahinoti tasmai tamhadevam atmabuddhi prakasham mumukshur vai sharanamaham prapadye. We who seek liberation take refuge in that infinite light which illumines the hearts of all, who is the source of the Creator himself, and who breathes forth the infinite knowledge, Veda, at the beginning of creation. Om Vishnur va Tripurantako bhavatu va Brahma Surendrotha va Bhanurva Shashalakshanota Bhagavan Buddhota Siddhota Va Ragadvesha Visharti Moharahita Sattvanukampodyato Yas Sarve Saha Samskrito Gunaganais Tasmai Namah Sarvada. The Supreme Reality and its messengers are known by various names in various traditions. But as for me, I offer my worship always to the one going by any name and belonging to any tradition, who is free from attachment and hatred, free from worldliness and delusion, who is filled with compassion towards all living beings, and who is possessed of all noble virtues. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So today I wanted to speak on the art of living, the art of spiritual living, or really just the art of living. Because what is good for us in spiritual life is actually good for us in everyday life. Spiritual life is just a subset of everyday life. That is what we do in everyday life. In order to lead a good everyday life, we only need to intensify and give more focus to the same in order to lead a good spiritual life. That was one of the great insights of the ancient seers, the Vedic rishis, that ordinary life and spiritual life are not two separate things, not two separate categories. Spiritual life is just a subset of ordinary life. And that which leads to a good ordinary life, if you just do it in a more focused way, a more dedicated way, a more concentrated way, that will lead you to spiritual life. That's the whole idea of the two margas, the two paths of pravritti marga and nivritti marga. Pravritti marga, the outward going path, and nivritti marga, the inward going path. Pravritti marga meaning for those who want to engage with the world, who want to lead what's normally called an ordinary life, and want to have a family and work and career and hobbies and so forth, entertainment and all of that. Then pravritti marga is the path for leading an ordinary life, but in a way that it doesn't contradict the dharma, doesn't contradict the spiritual principles of the universe, and in a way that will help us eventually, when we want to lead a spiritual life. And nivritti marga is once we have finished with ordinary life and feel that there's not that much to be had in ordinary life, I want something more. Then I begin nivritti marga, that is, I begin to circle inward. That is, I begin the inner life, dedicated spiritual life. But again, they're not two different categories. It's just a slight change in the focus from one to the other. The pravritti marga, the path of ordinary life, just that everyone in the world is living, can be lived and should be lived if you want to be happy here. If you want to be happy, if you want to be contented, if you want to be peaceful, if you want to be successful, in a larger sense, I don't mean just in the bank account sense, but in a larger sense of being successful in life, then Pravritti Marga is the path to follow. Even if you're not interested in spiritual life at all, if you have no interest in God, no interest in spiritual life, still recognizing that there are certain principles that I have to live by if I want to lead a successful, again in the broader sense, a successful, happy, contented life. That there is no peaceful life, no contented life, no happy life outside of these principles. And so as long as I am interested in the things of the world, then let me follow Pravritti Marga. There's no harm in that. That all of us have come through that in some lifetime or another. If you accept reincarnation, all of us have been through many, many lifetimes of Pravritti Marga. And then a time comes when we begin to feel, it begins with just a little inkling of a feeling that ordinary life isn't enough. I have the things I wanted, I've done the things I wanted to do, and still there's something which is missing, still something missing. And then we begin to realize that there is something higher, and that higher thing is what I need for ultimate satisfaction. That's the way to come to the fulfillment of life. So again, the art of living and the art of spiritual living are not two different things. Spiritual living is just an intensification of focus and a more conscious life than we ordinarily live. As Swami Vivekananda said, that was one of the differences between the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings of Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna found a place for everything in life. Swamiji had great regard for the Buddha, but one of the things that he felt was a shortcoming in the Buddha's teaching was that his teachings were meant for monastics. And you find even now in the Buddhist path that monks, and I say monks deliberately because nuns were given a very subsidiary place in Buddhism. It's said in the Buddhist tradition that the highest nun is lower than the lowest monk. So not exactly a sentiment which is very popular nowadays, and it should not be popular. It's not a good principle. That's why Swamiji said that the nuns' order should be independent. The nuns should not be under monks in any sense. They should have complete control over their lives and not be directed by monks in anything. But in Buddhism, that was the principle. And so monks were at the top of the spiritual food chain, to use a rather inept analogy. And if you wanted to attain liberation, you had to become a monk. And householders basically lived to serve the monks and eventually attain to a life where they could become monks and then attain liberation. But that was basically what householders were for. But in the Hindu tradition, it was always believed that one could attain the highest in any, wherever you were placed in life, wherever you're placed in life. That whether in the household, whether in the monastery, whether in the forest, whether in the marketplace, whether as a king, whether as a pauper, it doesn't matter. Whether you have all of your senses or whether you're blind or deaf or whatever, it doesn't matter. That the soul is independent of the body and independent of the body's circumstances. And so in whatever circumstances you find yourself, you can attain to the divine, you can attain to liberation. Again, Pravritti Marga and Nivritti Marga apply to both to monastics and to householders. Nivritti Marga is not just the path of external renunciation. For instance, I've met so many older people in India and from India, outside of India or within India, but people from India, who still have this ancient concept that when I come to retirement, when I'm finished with raising my children and finished with my career and things, then I want to dedicate myself to more to spiritual life. That's a wonderful thing. That shows how deep those principles have gone into the Indian soul. As I have told here before, when I was a youngster. I was 17, just about to turn 18 at the time. I was coming back from a year in Europe, which is where I found out about Vedanta for the first time during that year. I was coming back by the Queen Elizabeth, on the Queen Elizabeth the first ship, Queen Elizabeth. It was her next to last voyage across the ocean. She had one more voyage and then was going to be retired. So on the ship I met the first Indian I ever met. He was a man, I have no idea where in India he was from. He didn't tell me, and I didn't know enough about India at that time to have recognized, even if he had told me where he was from. But he was obviously a very worldly man. He spent most of his day in the bar, guzzling and loosening up. And in other ways also he was, what do they call it, conspicuous, a man of conspicuous consumption, enjoying life, enjoying his wealth and so forth, which obviously he was a wealthy man. But I told him one day, I started talking to him, I bumped into him and found out he was from India, and told him that I was interested in becoming a Hindu or a Buddhist monk. And at that time I had long hair, and he told me, well, the first thing you'll have to do if you want to be a monk is you'll have to cut off all of that hair. And so I said, well, that's okay, that I'm willing to do, but I want to be a monk. And so he said, well, that's good, that's very good, but I'm going to take the easy way. I'm enjoying life now, having a good time, but when I come to retirement, then I'm going to give up everything and go to the Himalayas and spend my life in meditation. He probably didn't. but he had the idea. He had the idea, and that was a wonderful thing. He knew that that's what I should do. That is the best, or rather not should do, but that's what is the best thing to do. That if I really follow my convictions to the fullest, that's what I will do. So again, that idea that spiritual living and ordinary living are connected. That if you want to lead a happy ordinary life, then there are certain principles to follow. Of course, the term, the art of living, that you may recognize as Sri Ravi Shankar, he has the organization called the Art of Living. I didn't take it from there, and I haven't studied Sri Ravi Shankar. I have nothing against him, but I haven't, there's so many things to study, I haven't studied that. So this is not at all based on his teachings. I don't have any idea what he teaches. But this is, I chose the title because I thought it was good for what it is that I want to say. So the art of spiritual living, why not the science of spiritual living? Or the science of living? Well, there is a science to how to live, but a science indicates something that if you have the right recipe, you give the right ingredients, then you produce an automatic result. So if you do a scientific experiment, which has been replicated numerous times, if you do the same experiment in the same way, you get the same result. And so science is a field of that which is predictable. Yes, the first time you do a new experiment, you don't know what you're going to get. But once something has been proven, then when you replicate the experiment, you get the same thing. So science is like a complex recipe. If you put the things together in a cookbook in the right way, put it in the oven or on the stove top or whatever, and do the right things, you get a right result, if it's a good recipe. And so science is, in fact, science probably began in the kitchen. Science has existed all around the world from the beginnings of humanity. It's only modern science which developed a well-detailed method of collecting data, testing data, and keeping records of what was done, accumulating records. But the scientific mentality has been around forever, and it probably started in the kitchen, finding that if you do certain things, mix certain things together, you get a predictable result. So science, the science of living indicates that there's a recipe to it. Well, there is a recipe, but the problem is that there's an art to it also. And art is that which is more unpredictable. For instance, if you go to study music, and you go to a great musician and you begin to study, say, violin, just to pick some instrument. You go to study violin and the teacher can teach you technique and can show you the fingering and how to use the bow and so forth and how to get proper tune. But at some point you have to, if you want to be a great musician, if you just want to have good technique and you can get a job in a band or whatever, or an orchestra or whatever, you can be second fiddle or something like that. If you learn the science well enough, the technique well enough. But if you want to be a great musician, you have to learn the art of music. That's something which is intangible, something which is real, something which you can hear. If your ear is attuned to it, you can hear that, this is a real musician. Because through the music, they're using the technique, but through the technique they're expressing something which is extraordinary, which can't be limited to the technique. One person just goes like this and produces music, and you recognize, well, they're very, very proficient, their fingering is so fast, their bowing, their use of the bow is so excellent, but that's all you can say about it, is that it's a wonderful technique. But a real musician is somebody who expresses art through the play. The same with dance. You can learn all of the mudras and all of the steps and all of that in dance. But at some point, you have to learn the art of dancing. That is, where you're expressing something from inside, which is not just the steps and the mudras. And then when somebody sees your dance, they recognize, this is a real artist. So with painting and so forth, you can learn how to draw and so forth, but at some point, what is it that distinguishes great artists from, for instance, illustrators, people who just know how to draw? That is that they've learned the art of things. So the same in spiritual life. We start with the techniques, with the things that we're supposed to do, the things that we're supposed to avoid, the way to practice and so forth. But at some point, spiritual life has to come from the inside. It has to become an art. And so the art of living. The art comes with time. But the hopeful thing is that if we learn techniques properly, if we do the things we're supposed to do, if we go through the motions, in time, the art will come. In time, the art will come. For some, it comes quickly. For some, it takes a lifetime for the art to come. But at some point, the art comes if we follow the technique, this science of it. So basically, that's what I want to talk about today, certain basic ideas. And these are ideas you've heard before, but put them in a different context perhaps today. That's all that I can claim to be doing, is putting them into a special context. As tools for living. Now, one of the first things that we need, and this I've said in different ways in many talks, one of the first things we need in order to lead a good life is understanding. And that's why we emphasize in our Vedanta societies so much, maybe too much, but we do emphasize a lot, teaching. Because it's through grasping the ideas that we can gradually change our behavior. If I just tell you do this and do that and sit like this and do like this, well, that's good, but that only helps a certain amount. First, you have to know why and how to do certain things. Then through understanding, the practice becomes fulfilled. Just telling you to sit in a certain way and to do certain things with your eye, to look slightly down with the eyes, to close the eyes, to regulate your breathing and so forth. All of that has some value, but it really finds its value only if there's a larger context of understanding. And with the understanding, then the technique part becomes less important, because through understanding itself, you begin to find from inside that your understanding awakens and you begin to see what it is that you need to do. So understanding. And one of the things we need to understand, And again, this is for ordinary life as well as for spiritual life, as I said at the beginning. And that's why you find people ask sometimes, Maharaj, we find that there are atheists who are very good people. So what's the need for all of this spiritual stuff? If an atheist can be a very good person. Well, yes, an atheist can be a very good person. But an atheist can be a good person, but unless they begin to become sensitive to the spiritual, they won't be more than a good person. They won't be more than a good person. And so again, these ideas help you lead a good ordinary life, and eventually they will help you lead a spiritual life as well. So understanding. One of the first things we have to understand is, who am I? Who am I? And as all of you who have, and all of you have been onto lectures before, you know that who am I means to find your spiritual self. I don't mean necessarily the knowledge of the Atman. Yes, that's wonderful. If you can find the Atman, good. But most people are on a devotional path. And so it includes those who are on the devotional path as well as those who are on the path of knowledge. Figuring out who you are in a spiritual sense. Who you are in a spiritual sense. We grow up with so many ideas about who I am. And we have our social self, we have our work self, we have our family self, we have our recreational self, we have so many different ideas of ourselves in relationship to the outer world. But who am I basically? Who am I basically? If you're on a devotional path, it means finding out who you are in relationship to God. And God as you understand God. Your chosen ideal, your idea of God. Who are you in relationship to God? For instance, and not limiting it to this, but for instance, if you are a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, who am I in relationship to Sri Ramakrishna? Am I a child of Sri Ramakrishna? Am I a friend of Sri Ramakrishna? Am I a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna? What is my relationship to Sri Ramakrishna? Is he inside of me? Is he outside of me? Is he the soul of my soul? Or are we two separate beings and I'm devoted to him? Finding out who you are in relationship to God. Or in the path of knowledge, for those who are on the path of knowledge, who are you as the self, as the infinite self of the universe? Who am I in my essence? Who am I as the Atman? Knowing that is essential. And again, if you know that, it will help you. If you come to some conclusion, you don't have to come to the final conclusion, because we are evolutionary beings. We're growing towards our spiritual fulfillment. But right now, who am I? Right now, who am I in a spiritual sense? How do I relate to the spiritual ideal? Am I the infinite self? Am I pure consciousness? Or am I a wave on the ocean of the Divine Mother? Or am I a child of the Divine Mother? Am I a friend of Sri Ramakrishna, the friend of my soul? Is God the soul of my soul? Finding out who you are right now. And that means finding out who you are in a way that is comprehensible to you. If you've heard about the Atman but it makes no sense, then don't beat your head against the wall trying to think that you're the Atman. To find an ideal which is understandable by you and which you are able to feel, something that's comprehensible. As my guru used to say, a dualist with spiritual experience is far, far higher than a non-dualist without any experience. And so find something which works for you. So who am I? And then what is the world? We spend most of our waking day engaged with the world, but we never think, what is the world? When we're infants born into the world, we don't know what all of this is. That's why the infant just looks at the world and wonders, what is all of this? Where have I come? What is this? But then gradually, as we grow up from small childhood up through old age, we're gradually learning what the world is. But we haven't learned it consciously. We've learned it just by messages coming from society, telling us what the world is. And most of those messages we've absorbed are wrong. And so what is the world? And again, for spiritual living, what is the world in a spiritual sense? For those not interested in spiritual life, just interested in ordinary life, even they have to be conscious about what is the world? What does the world mean to me? How do I relate to the world? And they can have it as an open question, that through life I'm experimenting with the world and finding out what it is. But if you want a spiritual life, then you have to begin to see, is there a spiritual depth to the world around me? What is the world in its spiritual depths? So who am I? What is the world? And what is my relationship to the world? What is my relationship to the world? There are many people, those who are extremely selfish, then the world is just a place of resources for me to grab. The world is just there for me to enjoy. Go out and grab the things, and let me try to grab things before somebody else grabs them. Let me be the first to grab at the world, so that I can get the biggest piece and the best piece. Well, that's of course a very low idea of the world. Or for a narcissist, the world exists just to reinforce me, to reflect back to me, to praise me. Now, that's what the world exists for. The world exists for building me up, for reinforcing my sense of who I am. So what is the world, and what is my relationship to the world? So who am I? What is the world? What is my relationship to the world? And then if you want to lead a spiritual life, who and what is God? If you're on the path of knowledge, who am I and who is God become the same question, because the self is seen as the divine. If I know who I am, then I've known who God is, because the self is one with God. But if you're on the path of devotion, then who and what is God? Who and what is God? So who am I? What is the world? And who and what is my relationship to the world? And who and what is God? And then what is my purpose in life? What is my purpose in life? If you want to lead even an ordinary life, you have to have some sense of purpose in life. If you have no sense of purpose, then you find that you're lost at every step in life. If I'm going from here to Los Angeles, I'm going to drive from here to Los Angeles, then I need to know that in order for my trip to make any sense. If I just know that I'm supposed to go somewhere, and I get in the car and just start driving, then I'm just going to go randomly and get nowhere. But if I know where I'm going, then I can have purpose to it gives purpose to every step. So if I know where I'm going in life, then that gives purpose to everything that I do in life. It doesn't mean that you can't stop along the way and do a little window shopping or see sights along the way and all of that. No, you can do that if you want to. But knowing where you're going gives purpose even to that. That yes, I want to stop first in Dallas and buy some cowboy boots and a cowboy hat and some other things. But I'm on my way to Los Angeles. But I know I'm going through Dallas, and so I'll stop there and do some shopping. Or I'm going to stop in the Carlsbad Caverns and see the Carlsbad Caverns along the way to Los Angeles. And so that's fine. So, do what you want to do. No harm in that, but know where you're going. And so even for an ordinary life, you have to have some sense of purpose. That's why one of the biggest problems in modern life is that people have lost a sense of purpose. Lost a sense of purpose. They don't know why they're here. They don't know why they're living. They don't know what they're supposed to do with their lives. And so people feel lost. And so finding a sense of purpose is extremely important. In traditional times in society, East and West, not just in India, in Europe, Africa, all over the world, China, all over the world, in traditional times, society gave you a sense of purpose because it defined who you were and it told you who you were and what you were supposed to be doing. And for most people that was enough, just to follow what the path laid out by society. Nowadays, the traditions of society all over the world are breaking down. Whether it's here, whether it's Europe, whether it's India, whether it's China, whether it's Africa, the old traditions are breaking down. And so many people feel lost in the midst of that, because society no longer tells you so much what you're supposed to do. Or it does tell you, but it doesn't tell you things that are satisfying. It tells you that you're supposed to be a consumer. So in America after 9/11, we had the President of the United States saying, well, show the terrorists that we are not defeated. Go out and shop. So we're told to be consumers. By buying, we're helping the economy, the national economy. So go out and buy things because you're helping the economy. After a while, you find that's not enough. Being a consumer, buying things to help the economy, how much satisfaction does that give? It doesn't give much satisfaction in life. So finding a purpose to life. So even those who don't believe in God, finding a purpose in life is important. And they may find a purpose in expanding their knowledge, their understanding. They may find it in giving to others and helping others and so forth. But it's only in spiritual life that you really find a solid purpose. Everything else is just sort of an invented purpose. If you go to a psychologist, a psychoanalyst, or a psychological counselor, or a psychiatrist, and tell them that you feel lost, you feel helpless, then they'll tell you, well, find some hobby. Find something to do that you like to do. Find some hobby. Well, that's good temporary advice, and there's nothing wrong with hobbies. Nothing wrong at all with hobbies. But just inventing something just in order to find life bearable, finding some hobby just so that life is bearable, then that's not much of a purpose. No, if you have a deeper purpose, then even your hobbies become more meaningful. Your hobbies can become fun. So if you have a deeper purpose in life, if you realize that the purpose of life is to discover who I am, the purpose of life is to discover God, the purpose in life is to realize the spiritual nature of the world and to serve the world, to help others, then everything becomes more meaningful. Even your hobbies become meaningful. So who am I? What is the world? What is my relationship to the world? Who and what is God? And what is my purpose in life? And that comes back to the ancient idea, the Hindu idea of swadharma. What is my own dharma? What is my own place in life? And so for that, again, to be really meaningful, you have to find a spiritual meaning. Why? Because every other meaning is only temporary. As long as there is death in the world, and that's the one thing that you can be sure will always be in the world. We may learn to prolong life, but life is always going to be shadowed by death. We're all moving towards death. As long as there's death, then all the little purposes in life are not enough. Raising a family is a wonderful thing. That's a dharmic thing, raising a good family. But you find that that's not enough. Just raising a family, just doing that is not enough. People love to be grandparents, and that's a good thing. Being a grandparent is a wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not only not wrong, it's a good thing. But just being a grandparent isn't enough. Just being a grandparent isn't enough. Having a good job, a job that you enjoy, a job where you can express your creativity and your ideas and things. Many people have to work at very boring jobs, but if you have a good job that you love, that's good. But that's not enough. Someday you're going to have to retire. And then what are you going to do? If you've invested your whole life in your job, and then you have to retire, you find that life is empty. You have hobbies. You like your hobbies. That's good. But at some point, you find that hobbies aren't enough. And depending on the hobby, at some point you find that you can't do them anymore. As you get older, you find that the things that they're physically demanding, or even if they're mentally demanding, you find a certain point where it's not enough, that you can't do them properly anymore. So everything in life will leave you. Everything in life will drop away from you, except for your spiritual life. That will stay with you lifetime after lifetime. In life and in death it will be there, and lifetime after lifetime it will be there. Birth after birth it will be there. And so finding your purpose in life includes finding out who I am, what the world is, what my place in the world is, what my relationship to the world is, and who and what is God. So now all of that is concerned with understanding. There are many other things that could be said about understanding, but first we have to understand certain things in order for everything else to make sense. And one last thing let me say about understanding. Again, I could give a whole talk just on the understanding part, but for now, just one last part. One of the things to understand, which is very hard to understand, actually it's easy to understand, but it's hard to get the mind to accept it. That's the hard part. The understanding part is easy, is to understand that life, the purpose of life is not happiness. The purpose of life is not happiness. Now many teachers, including many great spiritual teachers, now they say that everybody wants to be happy. Yes, everybody does want to be happy. But if you make happiness the purpose of life, then the major part of life is excluded, because most of the time we're not really happy. Sometimes we're contented, sometimes we're more than contented, we're happy, but sometimes we're sad also. Sometimes there are inescapable sadnesses in life. And in fact, much of life is inescapable sadness, sorrow, insufficiency, and so forth. That's why the Buddha said that life is suffering. Not that life is out and out suffering, that everything you do is miserable. No, much of life is happy. Much of the life is fulfilling. But even the fulfilling things in life are not completely fulfilling. Even the happy things in life are not completely happy. And so there's always a sense of insufficiency lurking behind every experience, even in happy experiences. So that doesn't mean that you should go and pour cold water over people when they're happy. No, let people be happy. Let yourself be happy. When you're happy, be happy. That's good. But realize that the purpose of life is not being happy. The purpose of life is not being sad either. The purpose of life is to understand, to go beyond happiness and sadness. And if you understand that the purpose of life is experience, the purpose in life is experience, and the maturity that comes through experience, the inner solidity that comes through experience, then you'll be able to accept the sad parts of life also. You won't try to run from them. So many people come and say, Maharaj, I try everything to be happy. I do all of the right things. I try to think the right thoughts, and still I'm not happy. Well, that's because life is not about happiness. If you're not trying to be happy, then you can be more happy than you are now. If you're trying to be happy, then you're driving happiness away. Happiness is not something that you can grab. Happiness is not something that you can produce. Happiness is not something that you follow a recipe and then it makes you happy, and oh, I'm happy. No. Happiness is something which comes from knowing that you are in tune with the purpose of your life. And that happiness comes in the midst of sorrowful experiences as well as happy experiences. So know that the purpose of life is not to be happy. Be happy when you can, but know that there's a higher purpose in life which is superior to happiness. Superior to happiness. That there is an inner joy which is not dependent on external circumstances. And that comes when you begin to feel that you're in tune with the purpose of your life. That you're going in a direction towards a high purpose, that your life is serving a high purpose. Then the happy experiences and sad experiences both will help you towards that. Both become good experiences, both become useful experiences, because you're moving towards something higher. So now let me move from understanding to some practice-oriented things. This also, of course, because we're sitting here and I'm talking, it's conceptual. But its concepts aimed towards practice. The first part of the talk was about understanding, but practice. One of the things to understand that I've talked about before is to understand that in spiritual life, that life itself is yoga. Life itself is yoga. Yoga is not some special thing that you go and do. Yes, if you want to do yoga asanas and things, then you go to a yoga studio, you learn the asanas, you go and practice and so forth, and that's a good thing. But yoga in the large sense, yoga as spiritual life, yoga meaning spiritual life, yoga is life itself. Yoga is life itself. And so spiritual life is not divorced from ordinary life. Spiritual life is the way that you live in the family. It's the way that you act at work. It's the way that you act when you're driving. It's the way that you do the ordinary things that you do. So spiritual life is ordinary life, but made conscious and made purposeful. So life is yoga. Life gives us all of the challenges we need. We don't need to go to a dense forest and live in a hermitage. We don't need to get up at 3 in the morning and take a bath in an icy mountain stream. We don't need to do all of those things. We don't need to fast day after day. What we need to do is to reorient our ordinary life, and to lead our ordinary life as a spiritual life. Again, with a sense of purpose, with a sense of who I am as a spiritual person, what the world is as a spiritual field, as my dharmakshetra, kurukshetra, dharmakshatre, kurukshetre, samaveta, yuyutsavaha, mamaka, pandavastraiva, kimakurvata Sanjaya. So Dhritarashtra asks in the first verse of the Gita, O Sanjaya, my sons and the sons of King Pandu, who are desirous of fighting on the field of Kurukshetra, what did they do? Because he's asking about something that's already happened. What did they do? But he says that on the field of the Kurus, Kurukshetra, which is Dharmakshetra, which is the field of Dharma. And so the Gita teaches us that this is our Kurukshetra, which is our Dharmakshetra, the field of Dharma, the field of righteous activity and religious activity. So life gives us all that we need. And one of the things that we need to develop in spiritual life is 3 types of faith. We need to develop 3 types of faith. We need to have faith in ourselves. Faith in ourselves means faith that I can succeed in life and I can succeed in spiritual life. Don't put unrealizable goals in front of yourself or that you're going to do something extraordinary. That's the problem that some people get into, not many people, but there are certain types of people who put in front of themselves a goal which is impossible. I'm going to be president of the United States. Well, I'm already 68 years old, nobody knows me, I've never been in politics, and so if I think I'm going to be president of the United States, that's ridiculous. Don't put impossible goals in front of yourself. Know that spiritual life can be discovered in the midst of the ordinary. And it takes time, it takes its own time. But let me just do what I need to do to the best of my ability, and eventually I will succeed. That's the promise of spiritual life, that everybody will succeed eventually. All I have to do is just patient work at it, at my own speed, and according to my own capacity. I don't need to do anything extraordinary. And so I have to have faith in myself that I can do it. All I need to do is to apply myself as I'm able. I don't have to apply myself as Sri Ramakrishna applied himself. Sri Ramakrishna didn't sleep for 12 years. Day and night he was seeking God without sleep for 12 years. I don't need to do that. I can't do that. If I can do it, fine, but I can't. So I'm not going to. All you need to do in spiritual life is to do what you can do with a sense of purpose. So having faith in myself, having faith in God, or if you're on the path of knowledge, faith in the infinite self which I am, that all power is within, all knowledge is within, all I need to do is to bring it out. Or that God is the repository of all blessed qualities, God is the repository of love, God is the repository of infinite knowledge, infinite power, and all I have to do is to connect myself to God, like connecting my stove in the house to the gas supply. Then I have an endless supply of gas to cook my food. So all I have to do is to connect my life to the life of God, to my existence to the existence of God. And I do that through devotion, through prayer, through meditation, through japa, through worship, etc. So faith in myself, faith in God, who is, and again, using God in the broad sense, which includes the Atman, the self. And then the third type of faith is faith in the universe. Faith in the universe. That is, that the universe is not against me. The universe is not against me. That we often grow up with the idea that the universe is always going to go against me. No, the universe reflects back to me what I have put out. That's the law of karma. That the universe brings back to me what I have put out. And yes, I put out some good things and I put out some bad things that I have to deal with now. But to know, because it's true, that within each of us is the strength to face whatever life throws at us. Each of us has the strength to face whatever life throws at us. We can think of all sorts of situations that terrify us, that, oh my God, I hope that never happens to me because I wouldn't be able to handle it. Well, it probably won't happen to you. Most of your imaginations never happen. But if it did happen to you, you have the strength inside to face it. So not to be intimidated by the universe, and to know that the universe is only a reflection of yourself. The universe is our mirror. And so we're looking into the universe, and if the universe makes an ugly face at us, that's because sometime back there I was making that ugly face. So in this mirror, there's a delay. In an actual mirror on the wall, if I look into it, as soon as I make an ugly face, it looks back ugly at me. But in this mirror, there's a delay. And so if the universe makes an ugly face at me, it's because I made that myself. And so to know that the universe is my own, as Holy Mother said, learn to make the whole world your own. She was saying it in a different context, but the two are connected. She was saying it in the context of knowing that no one is a stranger. Everybody is your own. But it includes this other context that, no, the universe is your own reflection. That nothing in the universe comes to you randomly. It comes to you because it's meant for you. And all you have to do is to deal with it. All you have to do is to deal with the universe as it comes to you, because it's coming to you in a way which is made for you. The universe comes to me differently from the way it will come to any one of you, and it will come to each one of you differently from the person sitting next to you. But that's because the universe is made for you. And so have these three types of faith. Faith in myself, faith in God, and faith in the universe. And then to know, as far as practice goes, that one of the things that I can do in practice is to learn to be here now. Learn to be here now. We're always, in our minds, we're always there then, thinking about other things at other times and other places, daydreaming. But learning just to be centered, learning to be focused. That's, again, one of the ways in which spiritual life is just a subset of ordinary life. If you want to be successful in ordinary life, you have to learn to be focused. You have to learn to be present here and now if you want to be successful. But in spiritual life, you have to do that as a conscious discipline. As a conscious discipline. Learning to be here now. Whatever you're doing, learning to be present. That's what the whole Buddhist practice of mindfulness is about. And so that mindfulness is present in all religious traditions, including the Hindu tradition. It's just that the Buddhists made that their main practice. Hindus made the main practice different types of meditation, like japa and so forth, and other types of meditation. Christians made their main focus prayer. Buddhists made it mindfulness. But learning to be here now, learning to be focused, and to know that whatever the moment brings to me, whatever the present moment brings to me, that's what I need to deal with. Yes, if I know something is going to happen tomorrow that I have to prepare for, then yes, by all means prepare for it. But not in the sense of worrying about, oh, what am I going to do? How is it going to work? Are people going to accept me? Are people going to like me? Am I going to be successful? As far as possible, blow those clouds of ideas away, and just to deal with that which is in front of you, to learn to deal with that which is in front of you. Every moment in life you can deal with. It's all of the imaginations that make life difficult. It's the imaginations about what's going to happen, or what already happened that I can't change because it's already happened. That which has happened, so let it go. That which is going to happen is going to happen, so let it come. But just take life step by step to do that which is necessary. And if you learn to live more in the present moment and just to deal with that which is in front of you, then you find that the present moment becomes a vast moment, because all of infinity is right here. The whole of infinite reality is right here, right now. There is no past and there is no future. Those are imaginations of the mind. Can you go to the future somewhere? No. The future is going to be the present moment as things change. The past, can you go to the past and bring things back from the past, or can you go and look at the past? No. Past is nothing but memories, and those memories are in the present moment. So there's nothing but the here and now. So learn to try to focus on the here and now and just to do what is necessary. Then morality, another part of practice. To know, as I've said so many times in different contexts, the power of goodness. Not goody-goodiness, but the power of real goodness. It was that power of goodness which allowed Mahatma Gandhi to face down the British Empire. It was that power of real goodness which allowed Swami Vivekananda to face down the Western world and to hold India, the glory of India in front of the world, and to bring the glory of India forefront in the Western mind at that time. So it's a power of goodness which allows the saint to conquer those who have bad intentions and who have bad habits and so forth. And so to know the power of goodness. Goodness meaning the goodness of truth, being truthful. So goodness is a fire. Goodness is a fire. Goodness is a power. Don't think of goodness as just being like this. I'm helpless. I can't do anything. I'm too good to defend myself. I'm too good to say anything. I'm too good to do anything in life. No, that's not goodness. That's just passivity. That's just weakness. So goodness, know the goodness is a power, is a strength, based on truth, based on unselfishness. That yes, I want to be unselfish, because by being unselfish, I'm really not hurting myself. I'm expanding myself. I'm including others within myself. The more I make myself selfish, the smaller I'm becoming. The more I make myself unselfish, the bigger I'm becoming. The more expansive I'm becoming. And so knowing the power of goodness, a firm belief in its value, a firm belief in that Upanishadic statement from the Mundaka Upanishad, which is the motto of the modern state of India, that Satyameva Jayate, truth alone conquers. And the rest of the statement is non-ritam, not untruth. Truth alone conquers, not untruth. But actually ritam is a different word from satyam. So satyameva jayate, truth alone conquers, not unritam, meaning ritam was the Vedic concept of dharma. The idea that being in tune with the dharma, being in tune with righteousness, being in tune with that which is good. So truth alone conquers, not unrighteousness. So there's a slightly different emphasis. Not just truth alone conquers, not untruth. It's actually truth alone conquers, not unrighteousness. That is immorality. So, and then also another practice is to learn to be subjective. And by that I mean not subjective. There's a bad way of being subjective and a good way of being subjective. What I mean by being subjective here is what Swami Vivekananda taught. He said always to look for the cause within yourself. To always look, what can I do in this situation? Not to look what others can do in the situation that they should be doing for you. Look, what can I do in this situation? What is my responsibility in this situation? If I'm unhappy, look to the causes within myself. Not why is somebody else making me unhappy? No. Look for the cause within myself. To learn to look for the cause for your experience within the subjective, within yourself. But also learning to be objective about ourselves, to be able to look at myself objectively. That's the difference between this type of subjectivity and the subjectivity of a narcissist. The narcissist doesn't see himself objectively. He sees everything only to aggrandize his little ego. But in spiritual life, we have to be subjective in the sense of looking for the cause of things within myself. What am I contributing which is causing this experience? But objective about myself in the sense that I can look at myself objectively and see what are the problems within myself, without getting depressed, without getting down on myself, but just seeing, okay, what are the problems that I see within myself that I can correct. So all of these things, and together with that, learning learning to find what is my responsibility in a situation. What is my responsibility? That's one of the places that causes the most suffering for us in life, is that we don't know what's my responsibility and what's not my responsibility. We're always taking things as my responsibility that aren't. Why can't I make so-and-so understand? Well, it's not your responsibility to make the other person understand. If they don't want to understand, you can't make them understand. And so realizing that. Somebody who doesn't want to understand, you're not going to make them understand. That doesn't mean that you don't try to explain yourself or to explain a situation to somebody. Yes, you explain it. If the other person doesn't want to understand, that's their problem. It's not your problem. And so realizing that. Realizing that the world is the world. The world's problems are not on my shoulders. Let me do what I can do within my life, but that's my responsibility, and that's where my responsibility ends. The problems of the world are not my responsibility. So things like climate change. Yes, climate change is a reality, and it is an impending disaster for humanity. That many people, their lives will be hurt or destroyed if things continue in the way that they're going now. But recognizing that is one thing, and recognizing what is my contribution is another thing, and taking care of that. But don't take the whole problem on your shoulders that I have to solve climate change. Well, no, you can't. You can't solve climate change. You can solve your part of it, your contribution to it. You can pay attention to that. But the problem is a vast worldwide problem. Who are you to solve a worldwide problem? It's not that you shouldn't, it's that you can't. And so recognize that. And so with the social problems at a smaller scale, at work and so forth, recognize that I can take care of my input, but that's where my responsibility stops. My responsibility is not taking care of everybody else's problems, because other people don't want you to take care of their problems. You can do what you can do, and you can help people to the point that you can help them. But beyond that is not your responsibility. So knowing what is my responsibility and what is not, that's one of the great tools. And again, that's necessary for a happy ordinary life as well as for a spiritual life. So now let me conclude with just a few more ideas that are tools to help us towards the art of living. One thing is the understanding of karma, understanding karma. And understanding the karma doesn't just mean retribution, that I do something good and I get a reward, I do something bad and I get punished. No, that's a very low aspect of the law of karma. It may be true, but that's the lowest aspect of the karma. To realize that karma is the law of action and reaction, that everything that I do is going to bring a reaction. It brings the law that to every action there's an equal and opposite reaction in physics, and brings that to the moral sphere. That every action I do has its reaction. And so understanding karma allows me to accept the experiences I have in life. It gives me a sense of contentedness in the midst of my experiences. Why can't I be like Bill Gates, rich as Bill Gates? Why can't I have the power of the President of the United States? Why can't I be this? Why can't I be that? Well, no, maybe you can, maybe you can't. That's a separate question. But wherever you find yourself in life, to realize that the experiences that come to me, those are the experiences I have to deal with. And that those experiences themselves will show me the path forward. What is my path in life? What is my place in life? Every moment is showing you that. Every moment there's a path opening in front of you. So just pay attention to the present. See the opportunities in the present. Take advantage of the opportunities in the present in a good way. And that's your way forward. We often think that I'm here, but my purpose in life must be 1,000 miles away. Well, if it is, you're eventually going to get there. But right now you're here. So look what's here in front of you. What are the opportunities in front of you? Work with them. And you may find yourself 1,000 miles away, or you may find that that was just a daydream. That wasn't your purpose at all. Your purpose was right here, or 1,000 miles in another direction. But learning that karma brings to you the experiences that you need. All you have to do is to work with them. And so yes, sometimes what you need to do to an experience is to say, no, I don't want you anymore. I don't want this anymore. I don't need this anymore. So working with your experiences doesn't mean that you grab them and take them inside of yourself. It means that you know that some experiences, yes, you take to yourself. Other experiences you say no. The experiences you have to say no to, those also are brought by your karma. But what you're to learn to do is to say no to them. And so karma, rebirth, having the understanding of rebirth. In India, most people just grow up with the idea of rebirth. More and more Americans are accepting the idea of rebirth also, including many Christians that I know. It's becoming widespread, the acceptance of rebirth here. But what does rebirth do to you as a tool for the art of living? It gives you a long-range view. If everything is determined by this one life, then when I die, it's all over, and I either succeeded or I failed. That's a very, very narrow view of life, and a very depressing view of life, an extremely depressing view of life. If I have life after life until I reach my goal, then I have time. I have time to do that which is necessary. If I don't have that time, then life is hopeless, because life, as you get older, you find how short life is. It's one of those things that young people, including people before 40, hate to hear, because old people are always telling you how short life is, and you think, oh, well, that's what all old people say. It's because they're already almost about to die, and so there's just sour grapes or something. No, a time comes when you begin to see, my God, life just passed in a flash. It passed in a flash. And all of the things that I thought I was going to do, that I wanted to do, now they're all, now it's too late. Life has passed me by. And if you have this idea that everything has to be done in this one life and then it's all over, then it's a hopeless. Life is a horrible, horrible thing. It's a tragedy. But if you have the idea of rebirth, and don't believe anything unless it makes sense to you, but if rebirth has come to make sense to you, then it gives a great sense of purpose in life, a sense of long-term purpose. One of the worst things in the modern world is that people are only thinking in terms of immediate returns. But rebirth gives you the idea that no, this is a long-term process. I have a long time in order to work this out. I have a long time to experiment with things, to see what life is about, to find out who I am, to find out what the universe is. Let me start. Let me not delay it. But I have time. I have time. So rebirth. And then dharma, the idea that the whole universe is constructed according to dharmic principles. That there is a moral structure to the universe. It's not that God likes certain things and dislikes other things. Not that the ancient sages liked certain things and disliked certain things, and so they wanted everybody to follow what they liked because they liked it. No, it has nothing to do with that. The path of dharma is the way that the universe is structured, the very property of the universe. If I try to walk through the wall, my physical body hits the wall and I can't walk through it. That's the principle of physical nature. There are principles of moral nature also, which are in the very structure of the universe, having nothing to do with God's likes and dislikes and some ancient book saying that you should do this and shouldn't do that. It's the nature of things. So knowing that dharma is like that. And then developing bhakti, devotion, even for those who are on the path of knowledge. Devotion will mean something different, but devotion in the sense of dedication to the spiritual ideal. Dedication to the spiritual ideal, emotional dedication, emotional involvement in the spiritual ideal. directing your love and your aspiration and everything towards the spiritual ideal. And then yoga, which is, again, the science of focusing the mind. That's necessary for ordinary life. Again, the art of ordinary life is not different from the art of spiritual life. You have to focus the mind and learn to focus the mind. But when you come to spiritual life, you find that that's all the more important. So learn to do the things that help to focus the mind. Be very careful about the mind, because the mind is the instrument of experience altogether. If the mind goes out of commission, then the life is very difficult. Happiness is known through the mind, sadness is known through the mind, success is known through the mind, failure is known through the mind, God is known through the mind, and ignorance is known through the mind. So be very careful of the mind, develop the mind, whatever mental power you have. I don't mean intellectually, though that's fine. Intellectual development is good, but not just that. More your capacity to be focused, to capacity to be dedicated, to capacity to be sincere in what you do. So finally, I'll just say that the most important thing in spiritual life is what you do every day. Once an American Swami came to visit me in San Diego, and he asked me, "What is your practice?" And so I told him, I began by saying that, well, every day and he stopped me and said, yes, that's it. It's what you do every day that's important. What you do every day that's important. Special occasions is good, but special occasions just help to give us enthusiasm. Just help sometimes to give us a little push in a certain direction. But it's what we do every day that's important. And so the art of life is the art of ordinary life. And when we come to a point where we want spiritual life, just increasing these things, that is, increasing our sense of purpose, finding a higher sense of purpose, a spiritual sense of purpose, finding out who I am, what the world is, what my relationship to the world is, what my purpose within the world is, who and what is God, and what is my relationship to God, finding out these things. And then having this comprehensive understanding, which allows me to practice these tools, tools of the conceptual tools of karma and rebirth and dharma, the practical tools of meditation, developing the powers of the mind, focusing the mind, learning to direct the mind towards God in whatever way I can, and learning that the secret of life, the basic secret of life, is sincerity. There's no way around sincerity. That sincerity is the way to do everything. So with that, I'll close. And I've already gone on too long, so I won't ask for questions today. I'll give a closing chant and then announcements. Om madhuvatarayate madhuksharanti sindhavaha madhvirna santoshadhihi madhunaktamutoshasi madhumatparthivagum rajaha madhudyarastu nah pita madhumandho vanaspatir madhumagum suryaha madhvirgavo bhavantu naha. Om madhu, om madhu, om madhu. For us who seek the truth, and for all living beings, may the winds blow sweetly. May the rivers flow sweetly. May the herbs yield us sweetness. Sweet be the night and the break of day. Sweet be the very dust of the earth. May the heavens pour down sweetness upon us. May the trees, lords of the forest, bear us sweetness. May the sun shed its sweetness upon us. May all the directions pour forth sweetness. Om, sweetness, sweetness, sweetness. So now for announcements.